Okay, I went ahead and cut out my pieces 5 by 7, and I tried to go ahead and cut them together to get sort of the closest match I could. I mean, we're going to be sanding the edges together, but it's nice if you can cut it together and get it close. I also went ahead and marked some of the edges so that when I go to put it together, I know which way I wanted it when I was going to put the box together. So this is sort of the orientation that I want of the two pieces. Okay guys, just wanted to share a quick little tidbit about how I use F-Engrave and Inkscape to do some of my V-carving and customization of pieces. The first thing to do is, what I usually do is find an image, typically an SVG, but some sort of image that you can open up in Inkscape and then convert to a DXF. So in this case, I've got this card suits image that I found just online with something that had the appropriate license that I could use, and downloaded it into Inkscape, and then Inkscape just exported it as a DXF, and then F-Engrave lets you either open DXF or bitmap files, or BMP files. So in this case, I just open up the DXF that I had exported, and then the main thing in here is to just adjust the settings the way you need them. So the first most important thing is the V-carve settings, and you're going to set the V-bit angle. So in my case, I'm using a 90-degree V-bit, and also the diameter of the bit itself. These are probably the two most important settings in here. There are others that you can use that are a bit more advanced, but once you have those set, you're going to mainly play around with this image height and image width, and once you have those, you can hit calculate V-carve, and what you're going to see is the path of the cutter to calculate the line widths that you have in the image. Now, one important thing to check is that you'll notice this white part is the path of the bit, and you can't really see the height of the bit in the image, but you can tell in the corners it's lifting up and down to be able to get these tiny things. Now, there's one sort of white path in the centers of these valleys, and that's important. You want to kind of look for that, because if you have a V-bit and it's pointed at the end and it's going through multiple passes in here, then you're going to wind up with these little bumps and troughs in your image. So in that case, you either want to use lines that aren't as thick, or you want to adjust this image height, make it smaller, something like that. So anyway, once I've got my image settings the way I want and the toolpath look the way I want, the really neat thing that F-Engrave lets you do is it lets you save the resulting G-code, of course, to cut it out, but it also lets you save an SVG file. So we'll save both of those. We'll save that out, and you'll save out the SVG, which basically takes your settings into account and will show you an SVG of sort of the outline of what you're going to be cutting out. And the nice thing about that is once you do that, you can open up Inkscape, and here I've got one set up, and you can first set your document to the size of your workpiece. You can go to document properties. You can see I've got it set to 5 by 7 because that's the size of the lid that I'm working on the board. And you can import in the various SVGs that you just exported out of F-Engrave, and then position them where you want. For example, maybe I want mine about this high, and maybe I want this one on the bottom around here, and maybe I want to make sure this is centered horizontally, so I'll say select it relative to page. This is under the align and distribute, by the way, under here, and I'll click that and get it relative to the page, centered like that. And then maybe I want these two collectively like this, treat the selection as a group, and maybe I want that centered vertically like this. Okay, so now that I have my pieces where I want them, these are just SVG exports again from F-Engrave. The really nice thing that you can do now is by clicking this, it gives me the XY coordinate of this lower bottom left coordinate of this part that it's going to cut out, this V carving. And that's really important because the G code that it exported cuts from this point. So what you can do is, first start your machine with 0 here in your bottom left of your stock, and move it, command it to these coordinates, which will move the bit to here, and then you can 0 your machine and start cutting this file. And you can do the same for this one. If I click this one, you'll see it's at these XY coordinates, and I can move my machine to those coordinates, once I've zeroed it here, and then run this G code file and get this. Now if you have a lot of these to do, you could automate, you could edit the G code and manually put in G92 commands or something like that, coordinate system commands, and automate it going through and performing these zeros for those files. But in any case, Inkscape gives you the nice facility to be able to use the align and distribute to get everything looking just the way you want, and set your stock to look the way you want, and then get the resultant XY coordinates out to know where to start your cut. So hope that helps someone if they're using F-engrave V-carving and want to know how to lay everything out. Okay, so once you have your box cut out with your hinges and your clasp hardware installed, although you don't have to do it in that order, but I like to get that done first, get all the drill bit pieces and stuff not messing up my insides. Then what you're going to do is you're going to cut out this felt liner for the inside. Charlie, why don't you tell them how we go about doing that? Come over here, bud.
First you put down your felt, and then you print out the shape, and you put it on there, and you take a sharp X-Acto knife and you cut out your shape.
You take how do you do it? You take a sharp what?
You take a sharp X-Acto knife.
An X-Acto knife? So you have to cut both of them at the same time?
Mm-hmm.
And then what do you wind up with after you do that?
You wind up with a piece of felt that looks like this.
That's right. And then how do we glue it in there?
Well, what you do is you take some of this glue and you put some of it right
Mm-hmm.
there in the edges.
Right.
And then you put it on, and then you can use a tool to soften out on the sides.
Oh,
and
yeah.
make it go in there.
Yeah, like take a screwdriver and kind of make sure you push it to the edges.
Like this.
Yeah, some tweezers. We use some tweezers. And push it to the edges so that you don't have any gaps with the wood, right? And it comes out nice and neat. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you, buddy.